design problems, which is actually exciting. So we're currently, that's a really bad image. So we're currently the design partner to ITV's technology modernization program. So we're designing several tools. We're designing several tools across their business in order to help some of their processes become more efficient. So the first project I was on was a really, really exciting one. Literally in my first week, the discovery phase kicked off one of the projects. So I travelled around the London and Leeds offices doing really in-depth interviews, contextual inquiry, really understanding how these people work. And this is me trying to understand, but clearly I don't. So when we were up in Leeds, we also got the chance to have a tour around the ITV archive. It was really cool, and it was a great photo opportunity. We saw some really old tapes from the historic archives. So really old Coronation tapes, Thunderbird tapes, Alive and Kicking, original negative. Does anyone remember Alive and Kicking? It was on my Saturday morning TV. Yeah, it was really exciting. So everything was going really, really well. I was like, I can't believe I found people to work with who really understand UX. I get to do research properly, really understand the people I'm designing for first. I couldn't actually believe it. So everything was going really, really well until a few weeks down the line, one of my bosses got an email from the change manager at ITV being like, stop everything that you're doing. It turns out that we had ruffled a few feathers. One of the stakeholders of the project, or a few of the stakeholders of the project, said something along the lines of, why are you talking to users so much? They don't know what they're talking about. You should be listening to us instead. Now this is really interesting because it's so far from what we believe in as UX designers. They're very much like a top-down approach. Now I don't know if anyone's seen W1A. It's a mockumentary about the BBC, made by the BBC. A mockumentary. It's a documentary. so someone who's worked with the BBC. But basically there's this really pretentious design agency in it who think they're just like really cool. They think they have all the best ideas, but they don't actually listen to anyone. So it's understandable. These stakeholders probably saw us, but like this, like these new people coming in with all these ways of working, all these ideas, and they haven't felt like they've been listened to. So I really feel like there were some things that we could have done a little bit better, thinking back. We basically could have communicated what we were doing a little bit better and why we were doing it. Like since becoming a UX designer, I've realised that it's one of the things that I've been doing a lot of and learning how to do is teaching people why UX is good. Like even when we look at the double diamond technique, we realise that as designers, we're not just designing things. There's a lot of communication involved. Does anyone not know what the double diamond is? So the double diamond is a process to help us implement human-centered design thinking. But there are essentially two phases, the research phase and the design phase. In the research phase, this is when you're really talking to people and listening to people, observing people. In the design phase, this is where you're testing ideas, collaborating with people, presenting your ideas, selling your ideas, loads of communication. But when working with clients, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You've got to sell this process to them. You've got to teach it to them. You've got to explain why it's really good. So it can actually be quite a big blocker. And I'm talking about in companies that have been around for decades. They've got thousands of employees. All these employees have worked there for like 10, 20 years, worked their way up, taken their time to work their way up. There's hierarchies and layers. Everyone works in silos. This isn't ITV, by the way. It's just a random stock image. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about. But hopefully what I'm going to say is hopefully maybe can resonate with maybe people working startups or like freelance or something, or in-house. So yeah, these are the sort of environments that I'm talking about. And what I'm going to say might sound a little bit obvious, like yeah, you've got to communicate what you do. But I hope by maybe seeing it from a new person's point of view, you realise it's important. Maybe you're hiring people, or like you're a new UX designer yourself. Just some reflection is needed, I think. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is talking. Of course, you do have to talk a little bit about your process. And I'm talking not about pitching to clients, like that's already been done. This is when the contract's been signed, it's all good, and the designers are sort of pushed in to meet the teams, the product teams, to get this shit done. So we present. We present about our process. Michele's over there, by the way. He's getting all excited. We present about a process. And by a process, I mean what everyone understands as human-centered design, UX, double diamond, all that stuff. So we're trying now to set expectations, meet the right people, tell them a little bit about us. But of course, we can't use all this jargon. They're not going to understand double diamond and human-centered design. So we try and talk in their language a little bit. So one example I've given to perhaps more business-minded stakeholders is this. Everyone's probably heard of it, this quote. If you asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. This is a quote from, apparently, Henry Ford. I'm not even sure if he actually said it. But I find that people go around like nodding their heads, like, oh yeah, that's so true. This is really cool. But what we say to them is, we need to understand the goals of the people we're going to design for first, so that we can come up with the best solutions. And what that means is we've got to let us do our research first. Let us have time with the people we're designing for. Another example we showed in these presentations is this. So we show them a sketch of a building on the left and the building of the building on the right. And we say we spend a lot of time in this phase because it's going to be a lot easier and cheaper and simpler and quicker to find a mistake in this phase rather than when we start getting some code in place. What that means is the first design you're going to see probably won't be the last one. We're going to test this a lot with people. This, also by showing a sketch, it encourages people to give their true opinion of the sketch. Like when you present someone like a shiny prototype that looks like it's finished, people are sort of a bit too scared to maybe say, it's a bit shit, or it's not what I thought, whatever. If you're just going to show them a rough sketch, it's going to invite more opinions and collaboration. So we also try and meet users if we can, because in enterprise UX, the users are there compared to like a commercial consumer-facing product. So we try and present to them, I'll show you the GIF in a sec. We try and present to them if we can. And we say things like, you're going to be really involved throughout this process. Often the reaction is this. Like, what? Why do you want to talk to us? Often they say things like, things never trickle down to us. People never really ask our opinions. Also, I get the feeling that a lot of the time, they're just like, oh, here we go again. Yet another attempt at change, because they've seen so many failed attempts at change around them. So it's just something to consider. So when you present it to everyone, you've met the right people, it can often feel like this. Let's get ready to rumble. But more often than not, even though people seem like they've understood, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of the project, they clearly haven't understood. So next I want to talk about not talking, in other words, listening. So the aim here is to really start building up relationships with people. And often large companies have quite tight-knit teams of people, and you want to kind of nestle yourself in there. And the way that I think you should do that is by really listening to them and getting to know them, understanding their goals and pain points and everything. So here are loads of research techniques. This is where you find out people's pain points and goals, attitude towards their job, mental models of processes. It's actually quite deep stuff. I want people to, I've had someone say it feels like a counselling session, that's why I put this image here, when I'm asking them things like, what's your biggest headache in your job? So yeah, I want to show that I really, really care because they're giving me some quite deep information. And the way that I show that I care is by thinking about my body language. I don't take notes, I rely on my recording or a note taker so that I can have a really human conversation with them, start building up that trust, show that I actually really, really care about them, make eye contact, be relaxed, try and find a relaxed environment, but perhaps not as relaxed as this. That's a little bit much. And of course you have to ask why. Why? And this isn't just about getting good insights. What I found is when you're asking someone about why they do things, it gets to a point where they're like, you know what, I have no idea why we do it like this. It seems really silly now. And it's at that point when they suddenly become really open to your suggestions and kind of you become this really approachable person who's going to help them loads. And you become really approachable. They're going to come to you with like loads of questions and like want to ask silly questions and like come to you with ideas like, oh, I was thinking this the other day. Like, what do you think? Like, it just happens all the time. As soon as you start showing people that you actually really care about helping them. And of course, this applies to stakeholders too. Do not underestimate the power of stakeholder interviews. It's probably the biggest thing since thinking back at my first story. I should have understood their pain points and goals, like their vision of the project, their expectation of the project, what they want you to do. Don't be rigid with your process. If it means being able to build up that relationship and trust first. So with stakeholders, listen and adapt. It takes a long time for people to truly understand human-centered design, the way that we do things. So build up that relationship first. And be human. Don't be a UX robot. So once you've presented your process, you got people all excited, and then you're starting to understand them, build up this relationship. This is when you can start enticing them in, getting them involved with your process. And the reason number one for this is empathy. So it's really important for us as UX designers to have empathy for our users. But what's really, really, really powerful in big companies, or just generally, is when you can get the teams to have empathy for each other. So we do this using lots of workshops. I've run loads and loads and loads of workshops at 100 Shapes, at ITV, through 100 Shapes. In my head, basically workshops are meetings with a goal as normal, but they do use methods other than just talking. So they can be quite fun, and especially in a large company when there might be quite a lot of meetings after meetings after meetings, they can be a breath of fresh air. We try and make them as fun as possible. But what's really great for me is that I can select the participants really, really carefully in order to create the empathy that I need. So one example of this is a couple of months ago, I headed up to the Leeds office and conducted a day-long workshop. Now the aim of this product is to create a sort of generic tool that 3 areas of the business who are doing quite similar things can use. So this is a user research kickoff thing. And the aim of the workshop was to just understand the similarities and differences of these 3 business areas. So what I did, I invited the users from each business area, people from the product team, including back-end and front-end developers all day, dragged them in there, and loads of stakeholders. It was like quite a big room. And it was really clear that people came into the workshop with quite preconceived ideas about what to expect. But like by having the users there and asking those questions about how things work, they were like, okay, this is going to be a little bit harder than we first thought. So the outcome of the workshop was there was a little bit of a refocus to just 2 areas of the business rather than just one, while they figured out the other one themselves. So it was a lot easier for me. So this is an example of how I chose people from various job roles to get together in a room, for them to understand the users, for them to have a more realistic idea of the project. This is an example of getting hierarchies within the same team together. So my colleague Zoe here was doing like a feature prioritization workshop, and she got the manager and the assistant in the same room. But it was actually the assistant who had all the answers, showing to everyone why she needs to spend more time with her. So reason number 2 for getting your clients involved is because they feel involved. They start to get really invested and they start to really care about the project. So we've probably heard of design studios. We do a lot of sketching workshops with our clients with the idea of ideating lots of ideas, and you can invite various people like users and stakeholders and product team into the workshop in order to really get inside their head and understand what they're talking about. But it's also a way to get them feeling involved, because when they start to see their design come to life, they get really, really excited. and that ego is a little bit pumped. They feel like they've really helped you, and they suddenly really care about the outcome. So yeah, another really good way of getting people excited. So get everyone in a room, carefully choose your participants, get them doing loads of fun and games, and hopefully they'll understand why talking to users is so important. So lastly, to train as a good communicator, to become a good communicator, you've got to train as a good communicator, practice, practice, practice. So of course you've got to do lots of critique with your team back in the office. It's a really good opportunity to get someone with not that much domain knowledge and explain the problem you're trying to solve and try and teach them through the solution that you're giving. Yeah, it's really good. It's better, like as I say, it's better to get it wrong with your colleagues rather than with your clients. Also, share loads. So don't come back from a client meeting just being like, yeah, it went all right. Come back from a client meeting saying why it went really good or why it didn't go so good. So for example, my colleague Zoe, who's another UX designer, she came back from a meeting the other day with her client, and she said, and she was just presenting her ideas to a room full of people. But instead of just presenting, she had printed out all of the designs on A4 piece of paper, so when she's talking, they can make notes on it, and it just created way more discussion. And we also do something slightly more formal called something called design ingredients, where once a week, each of us take an hour just to share and teach people something that interests them. So this is our developer James talking about props, something about coding. Last week, it was really easy, not. But it was really interesting. He had cows and farms and stuff. It was really pretty. But yeah, it's a really good opportunity for us to practice presenting, running workshops, and creating discussions. So to recap, present, present, present. You do have to present your process. You need to get yourself heard. You need to start setting the expectation of what it's like to work with you. Next, you start to camouflage yourself in the team a little bit, really understand people, start to build up those relationships and that trust. Once you've got that trust, you can start inviting people into your process and getting them to do some of the work too. And hopefully, it sort of worked with us. That's when you get people really on board. And sometimes you get certain people more on board than others, and you use those people as like pawns in the big company landscape to herald your process and say like, listen to them, they know what they're talking about. And also practice. Be self-aware and think objectively about how you communicate with your clients. Try and get feedback wherever you can. I just think it's a skill that's really, really important in UX, especially. So happily ever after. I really feel like we've created at least a few UX ambassadors at ITV. And thinking back to my original story of those stakeholders that we ruffled the feathers of a bit, one of them genuinely said this in a meeting quite recently. We need to involve the users now. I was buzzing inside. It was so exciting. I was like, he gets it. He actually gets it. And also, a previously skeptical product owner once said this when I actually made an assumption about a user. He was like, "That's not the 100 Shapes way, Hannah." Thank you. Good.
Does anyone have any questions?
Hello.
That project, what percentage of your time was spent?
I can hear you.
Stakeholders, or spending time directly with stakeholders versus with the actual users?
So I make sure to spend a solid hour one-on-one with the stakeholders, and then just generally, I'm not sure percentage, but just generally involve them throughout. Try and get them into your meetings and just catch them at the coffee machine or whatever and talk to them. It's not 20% and 80% or something. It's just generally keep them in the loop But it's up to them. That's the point of adapting to them. Like if they're just like, cool, here's, crack on, here's loads of, just do whatever you want and then report to you back in 6 months, that's fine. But that's the point, is listen to them and understand what they want to know about the project. But if you see that they're people who are maybe skeptical of the way you're doing things, keep talking to them and involve them. So that kind of will help. Sort of, adapt to them, play it by ear. Oh my God.
Hey Anna.
Hey.
Excellent talk, Anna.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about what has been one of the biggest challenges you've faced since joining 100 Shape.
I don't know if you know, but it's telling people what I do. The biggest challenges. It's probably this is quite a personal thing, but it's probably this kind of thing. Like, I find it really draining, and I get and I get really nervous. I think that's probably, this is quite deep. It's probably why I talked about this, because I suppose I'm naturally quite an introvert, and I find it quite draining to have to talk to people all the time. So I think just having the energy and doing that, but making it become the norm, is a big thing. That's a very personal thing. Yeah. So yeah.
That's what I was going to ask, is about that whole personality type thing. So
Yeah.
I would say that I'm not particularly overly
Yeah.
talkative in that way.
Yeah.
And if you are like that, how much did you have to really kind of push yourself, or do you, in terms of that, the other elements of the role?
Yeah, it was hard. You do have to. I think you do have to kind of be a bit out there. I think when you're working with clients, especially, I think, and maybe in other situations you may not have to, but when situations where you have to really convince people why you're doing something, you do have to be a bit like la 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 la. But it's such a thing that you can learn. Honestly, 2 years ago, I would never have done this kind of thing. You have to practice it. Even if you're a natural introvert and you like being by yourself and quietly thinking, it's still something you can learn. But I always do say to people, I said this to my boss the other day, I always have to go back, and also to my client the other day, I always have to, after a meeting and after loads of discovery and talking and stuff, I'm just going to go away for a few hours, or at least a day, to absorb this. Say to a client, sorry, I just need a little bit more time, sympathise in my research, just let me think and absorb it. So you can kind of maybe adapt it to yourself a little bit, but it is something that you can learn.
What's a workshop activity you like?
What do you mean, making them do?
Yeah, what's one of your standbys?
Sketching, always sketching. Even just in meetings, just be like, oh, can you just draw that for me? Just because it's really fun. Post-it notes are fun and everything, but they're just, even in big companies, they do that kind of thing. But when you get people putting pen to paper, it's really exciting because, like it said, it's fun. It's kind of their inner child comes out. And at first they're like, what the hell? This is why am I sketching? Someone in a suit, But a couple of hours in, they're like, oh my God, yeah, that's a really cool idea. And then sort of start sketching other things, and they become really opinionated and stuff. It is 100% the most effective workshop you could ever do. I typically use it for ideation. So you've done loads of, you can use it anytime. Ideation, so you found out loads of stuff from your research, and you're going into this design studio with a problem you're trying to solve, and you're going to do it with one screen, for example. And you get everyone to think of loads and loads of ideas first, and then you get them to present the ideas, and everyone critiques those ideas. And then you do another round where it's just one or two ideas, and then you present them and you critique them, and then together you might design one idea. Yeah, that's my go-to one. Even in meetings, just draw it for me, please.
So I'm assuming that you spend most of your working day at the 100 Shapes office, and throughout this process I was curious at how much time you spent at ITV, out of days of the week or hours of the week.
That's a really good question. So at 100 Shapes we try to embed our designers into the client teams, but not to make them work there full time, because they're still 100 Shapes employees. So I typically spend 2.5 days at ITV and 2.5 days at 100 Shapes. It's always really important to me to come back to 100 Shapes and pick people's brains. So it kind of doesn't feel like it's just me designing it, it's 100 Shapes designing it. yeah, it's really, and to become grounded and just talk about everything. So maybe half and half.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.